All right, Kevin, thank you for being here, brother.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
I'm
I've been looking forward to this for a while since you reached out.
I'm grateful to hear that, man. The reason I had reached out and wanted to speak to you specifically is, not only the stories that you told on the soft white underbelly, is where I was first introduced to some of your work, but also just in today's climate and world, to speak to someone who is in law enforcement in the past, who is carries your you carry yourself like a strong man, which is a needed thing in today's culture, but also a strong person who, went towards the danger that also talks about the serious and real issues that people and men, a lot of men deal with, which would be mental health related stuff, trauma stuff, the shit that's ugly and is difficult for people to open up about, especially people who are first responders who go towards the danger. So I think, and forgive me for tangenting in the beginning here, but I think it's easy for someone to be like a mental health advocate, but they're not very strong. So you have those people that talk about that thing, and then you have the heroic personalities that kind of just bury everything and want to be macho and pretend until everything falls apart. So that's a big reason I wanted to speak to you and allow your voice to be heard, and hopefully have a good discussion. So on that, I was hoping that you could introduce yourself a little bit, some of the work that you're doing now, and some of your past work, if you can.
Well, just to speak to what you just talked about, you got to understand something. It wasn't always that way. It took me a while to get there, and it took me to get to a point where there is nothing that you can say to me. There's no way that you can judge me that I haven't already done to myself. It took me a long time to get there. As a matter of fact, after I retired from the police department, thinking I was the weakest human being alive, I was 39 years old. And I would tell people I'm a landscaper when they say, "What do you do?" I'm a landscaper. And the reason I told him I was a landscaper is because if I told him I was a retired police officer, there's a follow-up question at 39. Well, oh, what? You must have got on when you were 12. It's like, no, dickhead. I was in a shooting and it screwed me up real bad. Hey, you want to talk about it? Hey, I was a little overweight as a kid too. Let's bring up another painful memory. So I just avoided it all at once. I just got to that point where I'm just saying, I don't give a fuck. I don't
Mhm.
fucking care. So that's where I got to. Um, and it took a long time. It took a lot of self-reflection, a lot of soul searching in order to get to that spot. So that just answers your question. I didn't come out of the box um, just spilling all the beans. It took me a while to get there.
Understood. Understood. Yeah, I think that's the truth for a lot of people, but I respect you being open about that as well. So, what was that initial journey and decision to get into law enforcement? And then again, giving some of your background in that field, and then transitioning, and this might be a long time, but how you got to the work that you're doing now and even to that place.
Oh, you have to go back to a broken little kid, and that's so there's characteristics of a police officer, and this I'm going to characterize a lot of police officers in this country. They come from households that are not stable, that are not very good. They were born in chaos, live in chaos, can't live without chaos, and when chaos isn't around, they create chaos because that's what calms their nervous system. Those people make really good cops.
Hmm.
Those people make very shitty husbands. They make very shitty fathers, but they make great cops because they know what chaos feels like. Their nervous system is used to it. They've been trained for it their entire lives. And that was me. I grew up in the Atlantic City area. I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s, in an era where the mob ruled. Okay, so the mob in Atlantic City, you couldn't get anything done. You couldn't get any hotel run. You couldn't get any hotel built. You couldn't get windows. You couldn't get waste removal. So they pretty much ran everything. The area that I grew up, I was with all the mobsters' kids. They were fathers. We knew they were serious people. Okay, don't get me wrong. We knew right away that they were serious people because a kid inherently knows that stuff. Uh, but I was never afraid of them. To this day, I'm not afraid of them. To this day, I'm friends with a lot of retired mobsters. But because I went home to one of the most dangerous human beings on the planet, and that was my father. So because I lived in a household that was just filled with abuse, and I'm making a very, very long story very short. I grew up in a house that was chaos. There was a lot of abuse. There was not much love and understanding when it came to that. So what that does to a child is it sort of breaks down your identity. You don't know who you are. So you have all this stuff going on at home, and you start to think that it's your fault. So you try to fix it. And how do you try to fix it? You try to, okay, well, maybe if I'm better at sports, that'll stop the stuff at home. No, it doesn't work. So then maybe if I'm better at academics, that'll stop the stuff at home. That doesn't work. Maybe if, I just clean the house a little bit more or rake the yard, none of that stuff works because you're misguided. You think that's going to fix it. It doesn't. So after a while, you become exactly what you're told you are, which I was told from a very young age that I was the laziest white man alive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that is. I didn't understand that. Kids don't understand that. So I became that person. Not the laziest, but hey, listen, if you're gonna beat the shit out of me, well, guess what? I'm gonna do something to deserve it. So I became a bully. And that's the big thing about bullying, right? So I was one of the biggest bullies known to man. I was bigger than people, I was more aggressive to people, and I didn't really care. So I would make other people's lives miserable. And why did I do that? I did that because my life wasn't okay. Okay, and that's the one thing I tell kids now when I speak to several different youth groups. I tell them, beware of a bully, and the secret power in order to defeat a bully, aside from a punch in the nose, which doesn't work these days because you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
What you have to understand in your mind is a bully is not okay. And once you get that, you take away all that bully's power. Because if a bully, I had a bully at home who told me I was no good, and I'm transferring that onto somebody else. So very few kids will ever get that. It's a big ask for a young kid. So I would make people's lives miserable, and I would I was a giant thief, and I stole stupid things. Aside from like the candy bars and things like that, I stole I stole condoms. Like
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a time when condoms weren't always behind the desk, but I'm 12 years old. What the hell am I stealing a condom for? I'm not using them. My friends would come over. Hey, you want a condom? What do you want? Lambskin, rib for her pleasure? Magnum. What Magnums weren't around yet. Um, but those were the stupid things I did, and I would get into lots of different fights. My only saving grace is I was a really big scam artist, and I was somewhat intelligent. I was intelligent enough to work the system to my benefit. So I always got good grades. I sort of flew under the radar, but never once did one teacher come up to me because of my behavior and say, "What's going on? What's happening?" They just sort of left it alone, minded their own business, stayed in their lane, and that's how I grew up, right? And all I kept trying to do was just escape this skin that I had. I mean, to this day, I still try to escape my skin. I got tattoos all over my arms and all over my body, and people aren't going to like this, especially cops. The main reason people get tattoos is it's a psychological thing. You don't feel comfortable in your own skin, so you try to hide your skin. Um, and I was a bad kid. I got my I I did my first tattoo on myself when I was 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 13-year-old and I have a 16-year-old. When my oldest became 13, I looked at him and I go, "Oh my God, I got my first tattoo when I was your age." And they're just little babies to me. So that was my life. That was my life. I played sports, but they were never really good, and I was never really good enough, and I just never really cared all that much. I was that kid. I would do everything dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Anything dangerous was good because as an adult, what I've realized as a kid is I was passively trying to kill myself. I didn't care if I didn't wake up in the morning. I just didn't give a crap. So I rode my motorcycle down the Garden State Parkway in New Jersey, which is a major, major highway.
So it's where I'm
Uh,
from. So
so
yeah,
you know how
yeah.
big it is. In some areas, it's 6 lanes going one way.
Mm-hmm.
I would do wheelies doing 70 miles an hour, no helmet, no nothing. Um, the good thing is I was never caught. I was never caught doing anything really, really bad. I mean, I've even when I got my license and I got my car, I got my truck, I would break into pre-construction houses and steal hot tubs. Like, what the hell am I going to do with a hot tub? I'm 17 years old, but I throw it in the back of my truck. And it was more something to feel alive, to feel in control. I tried to control my surroundings because my surroundings at home were out of control. But like I said, I was a scam artist. I worked the system. One thing in particular, I hated biology. I couldn't stand it. I went to a Catholic high school. I
Mm.
hated it, but I knew the nun really liked Notre Dame football. So what did I do when I went home? I watched Notre Dame football instead of doing my biology work. So when I went in the morning, I'm like, "Hey, Sister Dominic, did you see that Notre Dame game? Yeah, that was an awesome pass. He caught it here. He won it." And I ended up getting an A in that class, and I didn't do anything. I didn't do any work. So I pretty much scammed my way through high school, and I was intelligent enough to get to college and play football in college. I was okay enough, still lazy. And when I went away to college, I chose one that was 2.5 hours away in North Jersey. I, I'm in South Jersey. I'd come up to North Jersey. And I took this as an opportunity to completely reinvent myself, to leave that broken kid behind, that fat kid behind, that lazy kid behind, all those things that I was told as a little kid. And I'm totally going to reinvent myself. Um, and that's what I did. I dove into academics, dove into athletics. I developed a lot of, because I finally had control over my environment. So I developed a lot of obsessive compulsive behaviors. I would fold everything in my dorm room. I was the anti-freshman.
Mm.
As a matter of fact, my roommate was a big giant slob, so you could see a delineated line in my dorm room where my bed and his bed. I had hospital corners. I really locked down on my life, and it worked for a while. It worked for a while, but old habits kind of die hard. In my senior year in football, I was plagued by injuries and a lot of knee surgeries and then I ripped my groin muscle. And nothing humbles you so much as a ripped groin muscle, especially when you got to get surgery. I had about 5 Jamaican nurses standing over top of me, Porky pigging it out on the table, no pants. And all I'm doing is telling them, "Hey, listen, it's cold in here, man. It's usually bigger. It's usually more impressive." But I can't
Mhm.
understand what they're saying, right? So that's but by that time I was done with football anyway. Football became a job. I didn't want to do it anymore. So once I was done with football, those old habits started creeping in, and I started getting in trouble in college. And I started screwing up, and I started messing with people. And we used to do this thing. It's not a story. I don't think this is a story I've never told before. Did you go to college?
Briefly, I didn't finish college. Mhm.
So in the dorm rooms, there's big, heavy steel doors.
Mhm.
And what you used to be able to do is you used to be able to push the door in and shove pennies into the little slot, and we call pennying people in. And because of the friction, you couldn't undo the lock. Now, this is the days before cell phones. So we had a kid who was a little meeker than most, and we reach into the phones were right on the wall. We reach in there, we cut his phone line, we push the door, we penny him in, and he was in there for like 3 days.
Mhm.
Um, Very, very cruel to do. Very, very cruel. And again, I just started being that not nice person again. And I got in some trouble. I got kicked off of campus, which turns out to be a blessing in disguise, because this is going to be the reoccurring theme throughout my life. All these things that I think are tragedies, they're actually a blessing in disguise. So I
Mhm.
get kicked off of campus, and I'm out of the potential for doing really bad things. Um, and I'm able to finish college. I finished college, and I said, you know what, I'll be a school teacher. I get my master's degree in teaching. I get my master's degree in English, and that's what I did. I went out and taught high school because I figured, you know what, if I can't fix my life, maybe I can fix a kid. Maybe I can be that person that I needed when I was their age. I teach high school English for a year, and I hated it. I mean, and I didn't hate the kids. I hated the other teachers because the other teachers were just so mean
Mhm.
to the students, and I didn't like it. So one morning, because I make very rash decisions, I wake up in the morning and I'm not the healthiest individual in the world. I look in the mirror and I see this face looking back that I don't recognize, and I say, you know what? I am I'm not doing this anymore. Walk in, handed my resignation. I taught high school for 1 year, and that was it. All those degrees, all that money, it's gone. So then I was just sort of listless, you know. I bounced around from job to job, and I always stayed in the gym. And fast forward to I was about 25, 26 years old. I'm in the gym, and there's gym rats in there. You see the same faces all the time, especially as early as I went. And a guy asked me, he goes, "You ever wanted to become a cop?" And I said, "Well, I'm sort of on the other side of that, but my brother always wanted to become a cop, took test after test after test. As a matter of fact, in 99, I took the New Jersey State Police test. Now, at the time, mind you, I've never been caught for anything. I don't even have a parking ticket. I don't have anything on my record. 2 master's degrees, good grades, all this stuff. The New Jersey State Police came back, said I did not meet their criteria for even taking the test. They were having some diversity issues, and I didn't meet their qualifications as far as that goes, but I didn't care. So 2001 comes along, and I'm in a job where I'm traveling. I'm going coast to coast. I'm exhausted. And the way it was sold to me is, hey, you'll get a good pension, you get your benefits paid for, you'll get a decent salary, you'll never be rich, but you'll have a comfortable life. So I said, all right, let's give it a shot. I go in there and I take the test, and I do very well. And in June of 2001, I get hired by the Roseland Police Department in New Jersey. So that's my path to being a police officer in a very
Mm-hmm.
abbreviated fashion. But it was nothing that I searched. It was nothing that I sought out. It was just sort of just fell in my lap. And I said, hey, let's give it a shot.
Interesting. And there's a number of good points you made. I think the chaos, like growing up, that suits someone to become a good police officer. I think one thing that you said that was interesting was seeing your children as like babies at 13, and then looking back and reflecting on like how you were at that age as well. Because I think growing up in a bit of chaos, you're forced to become an adult, even though you don't really have those adult emotions yet, but you're getting yourself into trouble and you're acting as an adult without like, and now you're looking at a person at that age and seeing how innocent they could be. No one's perfect, but seeing like what could be. And I also think it's interesting that you brought up teachers, not asking what's going on, like how you doing at home, what's going on with you. So I do find it interesting to see some of your content now, because you bring up being a bully and hurting other people based on being hurt. But let's say even using that Jubilee show that you did, I feel like you were extremely empathetic even to people that kind of were either like they were chaotic in their thinking, or they were vulnerable. The one girl that was crying and had been through some heavy shit. Do you What do you attribute that to? Do you think that that's come through from your suffering or from your experiences as a police officer, or mental health issues? Is it I wanted to ask what, because you brought up as well in another context that you feel like suffering is a blessing. So I want to get into like what suffering is to you, how you see it, and then also again circling back to how you became that guy who, to me again, seems very empathetic to these people who are vulnerable and who are struggling.
So I'll answer the second part first.
Mm.
My empathy as far as how I've treated people in the past comes back to one person. His name was Jesus Aponte, Puerto Rican kid. I went to a school that didn't have a lot of minorities in it. And remember, I grew up in a very racist household. So I saw him, and he was poor. I was poor, but he was really poor. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
have anything nice. He was a little overweight, and he was a little bit different. Nice kid, though. Really, really nice kid. And the reason I'll tell you why I can say his name in just a minute. So I made this kid's life hell. We used to do something called the J game. It was, if we punched him, it was a point. If we kicked him, it was 2 points. If we knocked him down, it was 3 points. Me and my friends would do this to this kid every day. He had jeans that didn't quite fit him, and I remember he sat in front of me in English class, and I would throw quarters down the crack of his ass. And he didn't deserve that. Okay, he didn't do anything wrong. He was cordial to everybody. He was nice to everybody. So when I left high school, I always felt bad. In the same way that I feel bad for pennying that kid in college, I always felt bad for that. I lamented that for the rest of my life. So in my early 20s, before I became a cop, that switch flipped in me. I'm like, man, you were a real asshole. And why did you do that? He didn't deserve all that stuff. So I started doing this. You got to remember, it's the advent of the internet. So I started doing searches. First came with MySpace. I would do searches on MySpace. But do you know how many Jesus Apontes there are in the world? There is about 4 million.
Mhm.
But I would go through, and when Facebook came out, I would go through like 5 or 10 a day. I would message them, say, hey, are you Jesus Aponte? Not to mention, I never met anybody named Jesus before. And that's how we pronounce it. So I would look for him, and obviously no answer, no answer, no answer. And it didn't happen until I just wanted to talk to him, just to explain to him that, I had a lot of stuff going on. It's not an excuse. I'm not trying to make you get any empathy from me, but just to explain that it wasn't you, it was me. It didn't happen until about 10 years ago. No, maybe about 7 years ago. I get a hit, and guy comes back and he goes, I would always ask him, hey, did you ever go to, Absecon school system? And it comes back, he goes, yeah, I went to the Absecon school system. And I go, holy shit, this is the guy. So I said, would you mind if we got on a phone call? I call him up, and all I really wanted from him was for him to call me an asshole. And here's exactly what he did. And he gave me the worst answer possible. He goes, listen, bro, we were just kids. I forgive you. And
Mhm.
I got tears in my eyes, and I'm like, why? It's the worst thing anybody could say to you, that you treated poorly, that they forgive you.
Mhm.
Well, it turns out, I keep talking to Jay. I have him on my show, and it was like the first time we met face to face in about 25 years. And Jay's a police officer,
Mhm.
um, oddly enough, and Jay and I are good friends to this day. So because I was a little asshole, I missed out on a 25-year friendship. He's my oldest friend. He's my oldest friend. I know what his family's doing. He just retired. I know what his family's going through. We talk all the time, and now that experience that I have, that living with that 25 years of regret between the time I treated him poorly to the time I reconnected with him, I don't ever want to feel that way again. And that's why I say suffering. And to answer your second part of that question, that's why I say suffering is a blessing. Had I not done that to Jay, I probably would have never talked to him again. Okay, I would have never connected with him. I would have never been his friend. We came from two different worlds. So those little pieces of suffering, getting kicked off campus, well, that got me out of possibly getting into some real trouble. Getting into college 2 hours away, which is a big transition for somebody, that was a blessing. Even though it was some tough times, that was a blessing. What I went through as a police officer, while I thought those bad times were the worst things ever that happened to me, they were a blessing because they brought me to a position and a place where I need to be. So I just read this passage, and it says, when God wants to crown a king, he doesn't put a crown on his head first. What he does first is he breaks him.
Mhm.
Because what happens when you're broken is you will see the holes in your personality, in your orbit, and you'll have the opportunity when you're broken, in order to fill in those holes, to fix those deficiencies that you have in your personality, and then you'll be ready to move forward and to be crowned. So I stick to that pretty wholeheartedly when it comes to myself. If there's something I'm doing wrong, well, guess what? I understand that the break is coming, because that's something that needs to happen. It will always put you, suffering will always put you in the spot that you're supposed to be in. It's not going to be a happy spot. It's not going to be a spot that you want to be. Um, but it's essential in order for you to fix whatever problem that is. So suffering, C.S. Lewis writes that, if suffering is so good, ought it not be sought? Now, I'm not
Mhm.
saying you should go out there and actively try to make your life turn upside down, but let's put it into modern context. If you want to get in shape, is the way to get in shape just sitting on the couch, or is it to go to the gym? It's hard to find time to go to the gym. Sometimes the gym hurts. You come back, you're sore. If you wanted to get a better shape and fix your diet, well, guess what? Donuts are good. But
Mhm.
denying yourself donuts causes you a little bit of pain. If you want to stop drinking, like I've been sober 12 years. If you want to stop drinking, well, guess what? Stopping drinking when everybody else is out having a good time. You're seeing them have a good time. There's a little bit of pain involved in that. So
Mhm.
you have to train your body in order to have that discipline, and that discipline's hard. And that discipline contains some suffering, but you have to be willing to go through that in order to get to the next level. So suffering is essential.
Mhm. 100%. I think about that a lot because I do most of life. I mean, and from a Buddhist perspective too, is suffering, and I also believe that we can be liberated from suffering. And I'm not a Buddhist, but I'm using that terminology. But again, I do believe that I like the passage that you shared as well because I think like when we're cracked open or when things are broken is when we do get the biggest opportunity to take leaps forward. Although, as well, it can really break people, as you've seen, it can ruin people, what their experiences and their trauma and all of this chaos. So,
What
have a
what you got to do with what suffering is it's building a firm foundation. If you grew up like
mm,
I did, you have no foundation. I don't care what you build. I would go through these cycles in my life where I'd build this structure, but my foundation was broken and cracked, and it was built in sand. There's that song, a Jimi Hendrix song, "Castles Made in Sand." Well, guess what? Those castles made in sand will eventually crumble the minute hardship happens. So when you're broken, when your house is raised down to the ground, you have the opportunity. When you hit rock bottom is the best foundation in order to start building. So
mm,
again, you have to go through that stuff, especially for those people who've had tough times throughout their life.
mhm. I want to ask, with the specific law enforcement slant, and I know that a lot of other first responders, firefighters, paramedics too. What are some of the specific experiences? I know you detailed shooting experiences on multiple platforms. So, but just generally, like the day to day, let's say from your experience as a cop, what are some of the things that these people are dealing with? And I want to talk about how you feel like we can better prepare these people for this and also better serve them as people in law enforcement as also as the public. Like how can we understand what a cop experiences a little bit more deeply so we're understanding each other a bit more.
So people are calling the cops not to tell them about their kid graduating college or their daughter's getting married or their 5-year-old just graduated kindergarten. Nobody's calling the cops for those things. We get the calls usually on their worst day. Somebody in their world has passed. Somebody's sick, heart attack, something was stolen. One incident in particular, I got called. It was a car break-in. Somebody smashed a window, stole some pocket change, stole a charger, stole nothing, right? Well, prior to that call coming in, there was a 2-year-old who was playing hide and seek with his grandmother, and there was another kid in the house, and the grandmother couldn't find the 2-year-old. So she's either thinking she's starting to get panicked or this kid's just the greatest at hide and seek. Well, what happened with the kid is he locked himself into a homemade toy box and he suffocated and he died. So by the time we got there, the kid was blue, doing CPR on him, doing everything we can. The kid's obviously dead, but you do work on these people because the parents are watching. You have to try to bring in some hope because people are calling the police when they don't know where else to call. So I clear from that call, finish my report up. I'm back out on the road. There's no time off. There's no time to decompress, to think about what you just saw. You just saw a 2-year-old that was dead. Somebody in the beginning of their life who will not see what it's like to go to grade school, go to high school, find their first love, make their first mistake. All these experiences that you and I take for granted, this 2-year-old will never have. So then I get called to a car break-in, and I'm late going to this car break-in, and the woman's outside. You can see she's pissed off. She's got this mug on her face, and she's saying, "Where the hell have you been?" Actually, she told me, "Where the fuck have you been?
Mhm.
I called you guys an hour ago." Now, mind you, I just saw a dead 2-year-old, and I have to look her straight in the eye. And what I want to say inside is like, you insensitive prick. Why don't you even, you want to come see what I just saw? But no, what do you have to do? You have to shut down your emotions, and then you have to move on to the next call, and you have to treat it as if that's their worst day. So that's what I did. I said, I'm sorry, ma'am. We're a little bit busy today. How could I help you? So I had to move on call to call after that. So what a police officer does in their life is they learn to compartmentalize all the horror that they see. Somebody died in a car accident, somebody, you're doing CPR, or you've seen a dead kid, or whatever it may be. So you push that stuff down because you have to get yourself okay. You have to bring your nervous system back to somewhat normal and go on. Here's the problem, and it's easy to do in your first 5-10 years. What happens is you start doing that at home. So on that dead kid, I go home. It was my girlfriend at the time. It's now my wife. How was your day? It's all right. It was okay. It was a day. It was a job. You don't want to tell them. They didn't sign up for that. So you just sort of, you shut everything down, and you start doing that in your home life. The problem is you can shut everything down for a short period of time, but eventually all those things will start bubbling over. One of the things I say in Soft White Underbelly is, we're given a glass of how much crap we can take throughout our life. We don't know how big that glass is, and we don't know when it's full. And then one day it fills up and it overflows, and shit just starts coming out. And it'll always come out at the worst possible time. So that's first responders in general. They deal with that stuff. You take an EMT, they're going call to call to call to call. You take firefighters. I've heard some horrific stories from firefighters. They have to go in these houses and see the worst of the worst, people's lives destroyed. Police officers do the same thing. So you just push all that stuff down, and over a 20-year career, the statistic is that the average citizen will see anywhere from 2 to 4 critical incidents in their life. Okay. And that's pretty much the worst day you've ever seen. You've seen a bad car accident, you've seen somebody die, whatever it is. Well, police officer in like a 20-year career will see 600 to 800. So take your worst day and multiply it by 4 or by 400. So, but we still have to continue to do our job. I was just listening to this guy named Roland Fry. Roland Fry is a black scholar, wasn't a big fan of police, and wanted to do a paper, an academic. He's an academic. He wanted to do an academic paper on police use of force. So he rode with Camden. Camden's one of the worst cities in the country. He rode with Philly Police Department. He rode with Houston Police Department. And so he's riding with Camden one day, and they go into this crack house, and there's somebody OD'd on the floor. They've been dead for quite a while. There's still people living in there, even though this person's obviously been dead for a long time. And they're standing over the body, and the cops are all there, who he became friendly with. And he said, I'll tell you what, guys, beer's on me. And the captain's there. He's like, I can't let him go. And he's like, what do you mean? This is horrible. This is an awful thing to see. And he goes, if I let cops just take off when they saw something bad, I'd never be able to cover a shift. So he comes out with this academic paper, which completely disproves what he had in his mind, and he double and triple checks. And I encourage people to go read his paper or watch him speak about it. And that's why first responders in general are mentally unhealthy, because we're taught. When I came on the police department, they said everybody was afraid to get their gun taken away. You get your gun taken away as a police officer, you can no longer be a police officer. That's how you support your family. So you just shut your mouth. You be a man, and the proverbial rub some dirt off on it, walk it off, and go on. If you got a problem, we used to do something called choir practice. Choir practice is after your shift, you go out in the parking lot, somebody will have some beer, and you stand in the back and you drink, or you go to a bar, you drink. And so that's the coping mechanism. But you never really talk about the incident itself or how you're feeling, because you don't want to seem weak. Because if administration gets wind of you're having some problems, they're going to send you for a psych eval. You're going to get your gun taken away, or get even worse, get put on the rubber gun squad. They'll give you like the red training gun. And it's demoralizing. I always say getting your gun taken away is like cutting your dick off, because it's emasculating for a man. Women,
Mhm.
it's much the same way. They have a little easier time doing it. People are a little bit more forgiving with women. But for a man, back then, it's getting better. I will say this, it's getting better. Departments are starting to pay more attention to mental health. Um, but you got to remember, administrators are a little different. They're my age now. I'm running to when I'm out. I travel coast to coast, and they're much more forward thinking because they finally get it. If I have a mentally healthy officer, that officer who I've invested time and money into train and staff and be a good, well-adjusted officer, well, I want to keep them for their full career rather than having them retire early because of some sort of difficulty. So they're becoming much more cognizant. The problem is the methods out there for this aren't really working because the number one killer of police, I have to say this about police because it's the only statistics that I know. The number one killer of police throughout the country is suicide. It beats out shootings, it beats out car accidents, it beats out everything.
I think that the one of the big disconnects with people is that they don't see the calls that people have to go on beforehand, or the day before, or the week before. So you're already dealing with so much, so your patience gets tested a lot. So if someone's an asshole to you at a basic traffic stop, or they are showing aggressive behavior, you're already there. And to hold law enforcement accountable with my words right now too, I also think, like, and you've said this too, but training for these people and hopefully testing to see who this person is to some degree as well, because of course you're dealing with horrible situations, and thank God that there's strong people that can deal with those situations, because we need we need y'all in society as much as we need and almost anything, but first responders, especially in law enforcement. Like, we need people to hold this structure together, unfortunately. And as you said, no one dislikes a bad cop more than a good cop does. So I actually wanted you to elaborate on that a little bit, and then again, what are some methods you think that people can take to actually, like, start to bridge the gap and hopefully improve these situations even a little bit more.
So number one, people have to realize that police are human beings. We go home to our families, we have kids, we have our lives, we have things. We are not a 24/7 cop. People just see that blue uniform or that brown uniform or green uniform, whatever you wear, and they just think that's who you are. But here's the thing: we're all judged by our lowest common denominator. You know, if you were to have an interaction, pick a race that you want. If you were to have a negative interaction with that person who is in that race, well, you're going to start to think that everybody in that race is like that. If you have a negative interaction with a cop, well, you're going to start to think that all cops are like that. If you include special officers, there's like 1.2 million cops in the country. Um, Cops are no different than any profession out there. They're a little bit better, and we should be better because we should be held to a higher standard. But you figure in any profession that you have, be it lawyer, doctor, pick a profession, there's about 10% that are really just bags of shit.
Mm-hmm.
They're lazy. They don't know what they're doing. They're inept. They should never be there. Well, police officers, it's much lower than 10%. It's still a lot, but it's still much lower than 10%. And that's what happens. There are people who slip through the cracks. I spent my life because I always, once I got the job, I found it to be a calling. You get to be a modern day superhero because when people don't know who to call, if you watch movies, people don't know who to call. They're going to call Superman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, cops are pretty much the same way. And it was a good feeling to be that calm. Even if I didn't know what was going on or what to do, I was able to take control of the situation and do it. And cops have to remember that. We have a responsibility to the public. But I spent my career on being a good cop. I never took a quarter. As a matter of fact, a lot of places in town would give us free cups of coffee. I always say a free cup of coffee cost me more than a cup of coffee because I would always purchase something. I would always bring something up to the counter. I knew they were giving me free coffee, but I always brought something up to the counter to say, "Hey, You charge me what you charge me. So a lot of times a free $2 cup of coffee ended up costing me $5 or $10. Or I'd always throw money on the table or whatever it was, and they took what they took. But living life like that, and I know some dirty cops that went to prison. I know them. Well, I can't imagine disgracing the badge, disgracing the oath. That oath meant something to me. And being so willing to just throw everything away and be marked. Well, one of my friends is a guy named Mike Dowd. Mike, if you ever seen the Netflix documentary, The 7-5,
I haven't
7-5
watched
in
it.
New York, the 7-5 in New York was the most corrupt precinct in New York. And in the 70s and 80s, it was just rife with corruption. Well, Mike got in bed with a drug dealer, was running drugs for the guy, doing all this bad stuff, made a lot of money, but he got caught and he did 12 years. I look at somebody like him, and he's not a bad guy. He's actually a very likable guy. But that was never me. I would never, ever do anything like that that was going to disgrace and embarrass myself. I took that job so seriously. So a good cop sees these people that are doing bad, and you better never do bad in front of me. Um, just and I get a lot of shit for this. So like, well, if you were a good cop, you saw bad things. I'm like, yeah, I did see bad things, and I always did my best to stand up and adjust. I'm not going to go rat somebody out. What I'm going to do, because this has happened, is I'm going to first try to adjust it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with an officer. I never liked him. Something in my gut told me he wasn't a good guy. I got into it several different times where some things happened that I got pulled into internal affairs for, some scuffles. And thankfully, they were cleared because nobody saw anything. But my gut was right, because after I retired, this guy gets hit with 22 counts of sex with an underage girl and coercion of witnesses and all sorts of crazy stuff. So there are bad ones out there. And trust me when I tell you, the good ones definitely know what the bad ones are doing. They try to
Mm-hmm.
adjust it. Until in last case, the last resort is always to go tell somebody. It's always to go tell somebody. But I never saw anybody take money or anything like that. Just doing screwy shit. They
Mm-hmm.
would pull over. I've seen cops pull over girls because they were pretty, things like that. And that tarnishes everybody, because again, if I go back to what I said before, if we're all judged by our lowest common denominator, well, you're going to be the lowest common denominator, and I don't want to be judged up against you. I want to be held to a higher standard. I want to go back to what it was like being a cop on September 12th, 2001, when everybody loved us. That was the greatest time to be a cop. We
Mm-hmm.
were loved, we were respected, and it's a little bit different now because too many people have tarnished the badge.
Mm. And I mean, I think it comes back to to being a person. So you have these, and then occupying a position of power. So you're just a normal. Most of these people, good people, but possibly just normal, and then a bunch of fucked up people, which exist everywhere, and then give someone power, put them under pretty substantial stress, and you end up with people that might have been bad, but that become almost, they have a gun and they have power and they have trauma, and so that combination can be, can definitely escalate into psychopathy and poor decision making for sure. But
You're never
under
going to eradicate the corruption. You're never going to eradicate all that stuff. What you can do is mitigate it.
mm-hmm.
Now in New Jersey, the way they mitigate it in New Jersey is they make the salaries real high. All right. So the average patrolman in New Jersey is probably about 140,000, 150,000, which sounds like a lot, but you've lived in New Jersey. It's incredibly expensive. You're
Mm-hmm.
not living high on the hog. You're just paying your bills. So losing that job, there's not a lot of $150,000 a year jobs out there. So losing that job means something. So that has a tendency, and I saw that throughout my career, that the salary started going up. That has a tendency to keep people on the straight and narrow. But you're also getting a different type of cop now. You're
Mm-hmm.
getting, instead of parents sending their kid to college to go for an engineering degree, they're like, why don't you just go be a cop? Because a lot of departments don't even require a college degree, and the ones that do, so what? It's a good investment. So you're getting less civic minded individuals When I got
Mhm.
on, there was 2 types of people that took the job. There was the civic-minded people that was a calling, this is something that was really good, and then there was people who were on a power trip, and we saw those too. The civic-minded ones knew they just weren't going to, we weren't gonna get rich, but, we did okay. And then the ones who got shoved in lockers, as I like to say, they were on a power trip, they got a badge, they got a little bit of authority, and some of them abused that authority. And guess what? Those people got dealt with by the rank and file. It's like you
Mhm.
pull them aside and you say, "You don't do that. You do a correction on it."
Mhm.
But those people usually end up shooting themselves in the foot.
Mhm. So I want to go back to understand a little bit of the like your healing journey, let's say. So coming out and being in substantial suffering and what that darkness feels like, and then coming to a place where you're in the clear, let's say. You're more, life again always throws curveballs at us, but like getting out of that mindset of like deep darkness. So I want to understand a little bit of like being in that state, if you're comfortable enough to speak about it, as well as getting getting to the other side a little bit and what that looks like, and just so that it can also possibly help someone else who's like really pulled down and in that depression, which, being essentially being pulled down, and they're just in this soup of darkness, and what steps they can take to keep themselves moving, and then in the worst cases keep themselves alive and moving forward.
So in my personal life, after my shooting, which completely destroyed me, it just broke that structure that I built in that on top of that cracked foundation. I have about 7 or 8 suicide attempts because you start thinking that the world's better off without you. So I've been in the deepest, darkest hole that you possibly can be in. And when you're in that deep, dark hole, you think that nobody can understand you, that nobody's going to come save you, and there's no way out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I know now, what I know now, there's a parable to this whole thing. Guy's stuck in a hole, all right, and he can't get out. For the life of him, he can't get out. So he's yelling, "Help! Help! Help!" and walking by is a priest. So the priest comes by and he's like, "Father, Father, help me, please. I'm stuck in this hole. I can't get out." And the father's like, "Well, I can't get you out, but what I can do is I can pray for you." So he's like, "That's great, but it doesn't get me out of the hole." So the father says a prayer, moves on. Then comes by a doctor, right? A doctor comes by and says, "Doctor, doctor, I'm stuck in this hole. Please try to get me out." Doctor says, "Well, I can't get you out of the hole, but what I can do is I can write you a prescription." And this parable goes on with many different people coming in. And then all of a sudden, he's screaming out, and somebody eventually will come by and say, "Sir, please help me, help me." Like, say he was saying that to me, "Kevin, please help me, help me." So, what I do now is I jump in that hole with them and I look them face to face and I say, "All right, I'm here." And they'll say, "Well, that's great. You're here and everything, but we're still stuck in this hole." And I said, "Yes, we are. We are still stuck in this hole. But guess what? I've been here before and I know the way out. So I'm going to help you do it."
Mm-hmm.
The only way that my words hold any value is when people know what I've been through. So going out and telling people about my suicide attempts, and I talk about them in great detail. Um, why do I do that? Do I do that to make people feel sorry for me? No, I have to do that in order to set the groundwork to know that whatever I'm telling you and whatever is going on in your mind, I've been there. I've made all those decisions. It's kind of like when my kids try to do something bad. Well, there's really not a whole lot bad things you can do that I haven't done myself. I have the experience, and unfortunately, my kids know that. But it's the same thing with police officers. I have to lay the groundwork in order to say, yes, I've been in the deepest, darkest hole you can be in. I've had guns in my mouth. I've had ropes around my neck. I've taken so many pills that it's a miracle that I'm still alive. But there is a way out. Now, going back to the beginning of the show, when you are literally at that rock bottom and you think it can't get any lower from here. First of all, if you can say it can't get any worse, it can always get worse. But when you are at that proverbial rock bottom, if you take one brick and lay it on that strong foundation, you're starting to build yourself a structure. You're starting to build yourself a house that's not going to fall down. So coming out of the darkness, you'll start to see some beautiful things. Number one, you'll start seeing that you're not alone. Okay, there's many people out there. I didn't see that until I got involved in group therapy with other officers who were involved in shootings. I thought I was the weakest man alive and nobody can understand because I can't even deal with this. Well, I find out that other officers who are involved in shootings go through the same thing. So I know I'm not alone. And then when you're out there and you're talking to somebody who is where you were and you tell them that I've been in your spot and they see you, well, I'm not Superman, I'm not a superhero, I am a human being, and if I did it, I'm nothing special. If I did it, that means you can do it too, but you got to put in the work. So that's why I go out and I talk about in depth and in detail about these things. It's not comfortable. Every time I go out and do a big event, I end up having nightmares. I have nightmares, right afterwards, because it brings up things that even now I'm burying,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm willing to do it. And I've been there before. It's a familiar feeling. So when you experience a feeling for the first time, you instantly revert back to when you were a child. So when you were a kid and you fell down, well, guess what? Tears are coming out. If you got something taken away, you got a toy taken away, well, maybe you'll get angry. Those childhood emotions will come out. So when I went through these emotions that I had never dealt with before, I acted like a child. And you have to understand that with people. You have to also give them the room in order to act out how they need to act out.
Mm.
And making those connections with people. So you connect to people in a certain way. I could sit here and tell you, yeah, I don't even know how many life-saving awards I have. I have medals of valor. I have all these different things. And you're going to look at me and you're going to go, oh, well, that's pretty cool. And if you say that to another cop, we fight for these trophies. Oh, well, I did this. Well, I did this. I arrested 5 people. I arrested 6 people. I got 10 kilos. Yeah, I got 11 kilos. And you start this cycle of trying to impress one another. But you don't impress people with your success. You connect to them through your vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So being vulnerable, going out and bearing my soul, that's how you make connection with a human being. Because the minute you start telling people, yeah, I had a gun in my mouth, I was ready to pull the trigger, versus, hey, I got 10 life-saving awards, people don't care. But when they hear you have a gun in your mouth, you'll see their demeanor change. And I found much more success being me, telling people what I've gone through, than I ever could hope to imagine with telling people the things that I've done.
Mm-hmm.
I've done my podcast for 5 years. I've been on Jubilee. I just did the Enemies Project. I got a bunch of stuff planned for 2026. I've traveled coast to coast. People don't care. What people are going to care about is I've been on those 11:30 at night phone calls with an officer who's in crisis, saying, "Hey, listen, man, whatever you're thinking of doing, just don't do this. I just don't want you to do this today. Sleep on it. Wake up tomorrow. See what the sun looks like tomorrow. And if you're still thinking about it tomorrow, that's a different conversation."
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, yeah, it's been something else. It's been something else. But yeah, I always think you get further with vulnerability than you will with trying to impress people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing too, because it allows you to, you're bearing your soul, and then you're able to listen to other people as well, and people will share things with you when you are vulnerable with them, or you at least give them the space to elaborate. And I'm sure you think of it, but even if you don't, like, I do also believe, and I do think it's important for like strong men who have these like heroic personality traits as well, where you want to go to the call where you're going to be able to help someone or even possibly save someone's life. So you have that strong persona, and then also to be able to be like, I've hit rock bottom, I've been at the pits, I've seen darkness. I think it means a lot coming from people that are strong, and that do the types of jobs that you do. So that's, again, reinforcing why I wanted to discuss that with a person like
Well,
yourself.
Jordan
You know,
Peterson puts it perfectly. So Jordan Peterson puts this perfectly. Um, being being weak is not a virtue.
Mm-hmm.
Being, he does this whole thing where uh, a strong person who keeps or an angry person who keeps their anger in check, that's a powerful person.
Mm-hmm.
A weak person is just there's no bite to it. So it's better to be what's the saying? It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would prefer to be the warrior in the garden because I'm capable of it, and I will bare my soul to you. But I also have the ability to punch you in the face
Mm-hmm.
if you disrespect me. I have that ability. So that's where you know when somebody's dangerous and they keep that danger in check, they have the capability, they have the ability to do it. They actively choose not to be violent, not to be dangerous, because they know it doesn't really solve anything. But when the time comes, and the time does come from time to time, it's there. It's the capability is there.
Mm. Yeah, he does talk a lot about that in the encounter with the proverbial Jungian shadow, which would be those dark elements of our personality, but and the whole spectrum of that experience, so suffering being part of that, and whatever shit that you have boiling up inside of you, but also the anger and also that stuff, and keeping that in check, and then making that choice, knowing that I could be this awful person, and being able to empathize even to a degree with that darkness. Of course, not allowing it and setting boundaries against it, but just having that structure within yourself to be like, I'm choosing kindness. I have danger, but I'm choosing genuity and kindness, and to show up in a positive fashion. So I appreciate you bringing up some of Jordan's teaching, because I've spent a lot of time listening to him, and hopefully he's doing all right. I know he had some health stuff.
I
Um,
I hope he's doing all right because I'm supposed to do something with him out in California this year or so.
oh, let's go. Yeah, I've spent I
Mm.
when he first kind of burst on the scene and he first did Rogan, maybe a decade ago, I went down like the rabbit hole of his lectures. So I really I think he's a good man. Like I genuinely I know he's had some stuff go on over the past few years, and but I
He's got an autoimmune disease. Yeah,
yeah, but I know he's a good man, and I learned a lot from his lectures. So I've taken a lot from him.
trying to get trying to get to what you speak to. I'm a Christian, and I found my faith through all this hell.
Mhm.
And I'm a big King David guy. King
Mhm.
David, when I was 21 years old, is the person that made me lose my faith, but it also keeps me returning to my faith. So the reason I'm a big King David guy is I don't think I'm like King David, but I can identify with him.
Mm.
David was probably the greatest king that ever lived in the Old Testament, and he was the best, right? He had a soft side, he had a tender side, and he was also a true blue warrior. But he was a fallible man. He was a man after God's own heart, but he made some of the worst mistakes ever that he paid dearly for. Even when he was king, and because God punished him for him laying with Bathsheba, his son Absalom revolts against him. David's on the run. David's almost lost, and he's broken down, and God broke him down, but then recrowns him, and he has to do the unthinkable, which is to kill his son. But if you look at David's life, he makes all these horrible mistakes, but yet he is still capable of such wonderful things, and that's why I identify with David, because I've done all these horrible things in my life. Doesn't mean I'm not capable of doing really great things.
On that topic, to a level, and even what Jordan talks about with being dangerous but choosing to not act on it. What kind of advice and things, what kind of problems do you see with like the modern man? I mean, there's a lot, but like modern men. And then what are some of the attributes you think that some of these men can adopt to strengthen themselves and to also be better men in society, more comprehensive males that are dangerous but are also empathetic and also good people?
That's a really interesting question. Fixing men in general. Well, every woman will say, you know, men are the problem, but I think it's getting back to more of the traditional man.
Mm.
What's a man's traditional role? It's to provide, it's to protect. That's our traditional role. And I'm not saying men are better than women. We are better at certain things than women. We're not equal to them. Women are better at nurturing. They're better at raising kids. Um, Men are better at protecting the family. Women are better at taking care of the family. The one thing I will say for men is carrying around the weight of thinking that you always have to put forth this certain persona. That's exhausting. That's
Mm-hmm.
exhausting. Be capable. Be capable of doing certain things. Train your body, train your mind. Slow down a minute. Um, Experience new things. Don't be afraid to experience new things. Don't be afraid of what people are going to think about you. You know, I think I was just on there was a question on my show, and it was, if you had a superpower, what would it be? And the people on the show, hey, listen, I could fly or be invisible and stuff. My favorite superpower, if I could have it, and this is something, you know, everybody likes to say, well, I don't give a shit what people think, but you do. We all do. We all care what people think about us. The one superpower that I would like is to truly, honestly, not give a shit what people think. That
Mm-hmm.
Jubilee video. I don't know if you ever read some of the comments. Some of the comments are brutal. Fuck the police. All cops are bastards. Whatever. You know, I got about 10 death threats a week from it. Um, and some of the things that people said stabbed me a little bit. But I
Mm-hmm.
would like to be able to read them and just, all right, whatever, you know, and just they don't affect me. But that's a very big ask. So I think every man should try to strive for that. Just be yourself. Don't think you have to be anything. Just
Mm-hmm.
be who you are. Don't put on an act, because an act is another word for a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And if you tell somebody the truth about yourself, it will always be the truth. You don't even have to think about it. But when you lie, perpetuating that lie becomes exhausting. And that's why men die earlier, because we carry around that weight of always having to be something, put on that act. Um, it's an unhealthy way to live, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people have been kicked in the teeth so many times that their guard is up. That's part of the problem.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that answer. Especially leaning into some of what we are naturally good at and some of those traditional roles, while also, I do believe in breaking some of the bounds of, like you said, being yourself, and maybe try not to carry the weight of something you think you're supposed to be. I mean, I know that back in the day, there's definitely more of that, like, just like grit and bear it, which has its perks in certain contexts, but it also can fucking ruin your mental health. And I think that it's good that we're opening up the door to some of those conversations a bit more, but obviously it's starting to go off the rails and get much softer as well, to the point where people want to be victims, and that can be a dangerous route as well. Um,
I've seen many people that make a living out of being a victim, and when people don't buy their victimhood in one thing, they'll find something else to be a victim in. Well, guess what? You know, all you can do is take your bad beats, you learn from them, you try not to repeat them, and move forward. As long as you take them one step forward, because sometimes that progress isn't even a step. It's a hair ahead, but at least you're moving forward. There's going to be setbacks throughout your life, but it doesn't mean that you can't still do great things. You just got to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, identify what went wrong, identify what would happen, own it, and keep moving forward.
hmm. So I guess one, kind of a final question I'd want to have is just opening up the dialogue for the people who do. There's a lot of division going on, and I've taken somewhat of a cynical, but like, I'm optimistic about the nature of humanity, but a little more cynical about the political climate that we're living in on both ends of the spectrum. I think we're getting into a lot of the divide and rule, and sort of some of the just going into some weird directions across the board. But what are some of the ways that you would like for, like, the ACAB, all cops are bastards type people, to kind of understand again, and I know you answered this a little bit, but to kind of understand where people like yourself and the professions that you're in are coming from, and then how would you also want to bridge the gap so that cops are going to be more understanding of how other people are viewing them, and then to finalize it, and to, what is something you would want to also leave people with here, if there's any other piece of wisdom or advice that you have used in your life, again and again, to get you through some of the more challenging times and into a place of happiness. And
I think we all need to look into what's their deal. So I have a lot of friends who have really nasty ex-wives. Okay. And I will ask them, what's their deal? Like, what do they believe? What is their reality? Because even the people who say all cops are bastards, there's something to their reality, misguided as it may be. There's something to their reality. Why do they think that way? I think we need to step into the opposition. Whatever way
mm,
you think, stop listening to the constant rewinded tape of people who just agree with you. I wouldn't want to. I like going on those debate shows because I don't want to sit in front of somebody that's just going to tell me I'm right all the time. I want to hear what you have to say, why you think that way, because it's going to give me a better understanding. I'm a big Sun Tzu Art of War type of guy. All right, and it's know thy enemy as you know thyself. Well, I want to know, and I'm not saying they're enemies, but I want to know what the other side thinks. I want to know what their deal is. Why do you think that way? Because is there any truth to it? I choose to have opinions and not beliefs. I have one belief, my belief in God. That is my one belief. That is something that nobody can ever take away from me. Nobody can ever change. That is my identity through and through. But
mm,
the rest of the things in my life, they're all opinions, because opinions can be changed.
mm,
You try to change a belief, you're going to swim against the tide. And I think a lot of people, they hook onto a movement, they hook onto something, and it becomes their belief, even though it's an opinion. Because a belief has no there if you have a belief, there's nothing you can say to me that's ever going to change my mind.
mm,
All right? So if I have an opinion, you may come up with say something. I'll be like, tell me more about that. Where can I find that stuff? Give me the information. I'd like to read it myself. Stop being sheep.
mm,
Stop being sheep that we're just spoon fed this information. Because there's three types of people in this world. There's wolves, there's sheep, and there's sheepdog. Now, without the sheepdog, the sheep are just easy pickings, right? The wolves are going to come in and tear them in, wreck shop, and just destroy the whole thing. The wolf's job is to convince the sheep that the sheepdog is not needed. All right. So once the sheep start getting convinced, oh, we don't need the sheepdog, we're good without them. The wolves, they're honorable people. And then it's just chaos and it's bedlam, because they're getting spoon fed information. Both sides are getting spoon fed information. If you're on the right, you're listening to Fox News. If you're on the left, you're listening to CNN. There is no more news. When I was a kid, it was Walter Cronkite. That's the way that it is. Here's the news. You make up your own mind. Now our minds are being made up for us. We're getting spoon fed all this information through the algorithm and social media. It's only going to push out what you want to hear, and you just keep hearing the same redundant thing over and over again. And it's poisoning the country. It is poisoning the country. So I would prefer to sit across from somebody who has an opposing view of mine, and I challenge them. Now, I'm not going to make it easy for you. I'm going to
mm,
sit there and I'm going to come with my facts and my beliefs, or my opinions anyway, and I'm going to tell you the way that I think. Your argument better be strong. You better come to me with facts, because
mm,
otherwise I'm just going to call your bluff on it. I'm going to make you look like an idiot. And I just think that's the problem. Everybody just gets stuck in that belief system rather than having opinions. I'd rather have opinions, because opinions
mm.
can be changed.
Agreed. Agreed. And if there is anything else you'd want to leave people with, maybe a piece of, like I said, a piece of wisdom or something you return to that kind of keeps you going and keeps you in a good space and gives you that energy to continue to speak with people and to help change people's mind, whether they agree with you or not. Just seeing the humanity in in yourself.
So there's two things, and one of them just keeps popping up over and over and over again. First thing I'm going to tell everybody is, you are never as good as your best day. and you are never as bad as your worst day. You sit somewhere in the middle, and if people need to remember that moving forward. So if you have a bad day, that's not who you are, and if you have a good day, that's not who you are, because you'll hear this a lot. People will say, "This too shall pass." Well, that goes both ways. Yes, the bad times will pass, but so will the good times.
Mm-hmm.
People, it's a very grounding subject. But what I want to leave people with is, be the person. If you have that strong opinion on something, don't keep it to yourself. Voice your opinion. It's okay to voice your opinion. It's okay for other people to voice their opinion. Give the room and the space in order to do that. So there's one quote from Isaiah 6:8 that just keeps going through my head. I've been chewing on this one for a couple months now. Isaiah 6:8 says, "And I heard the voice of the Lord, and he said, Whom shall I send, and whom shall go for us? And I stand up and I said, Here I am, Lord, send me." So if nobody else is going to sit there and bring a light to suicide, you got all these people who call themselves advocates, and half of them are full of shit. I'm going to tell you right now, half of them are full of shit. It's mental health is a big deal right now, and everybody sort of just wants to jump on the bandwagon, but they have no real world experience. They say they're an advocate for mental health. I don't like to call myself an advocate because nobody's advocating for mentally unhealthy people. I am a person who's just probably made about every bad mistake that you can possibly make in life. And each mistake has taught me, I think, mistakes and losses and defeats and trauma. It's our greatest teacher, just like I believe suffering is our greatest teacher. And if you don't learn anything from all those things, what a wasted opportunity that is.
Mm. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much for your time today as well. I do appreciate talking with you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having
And
me.
yeah, man, had a good time. I hope some people get some good things out of it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.